The Starr and D'Amico Show is brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. If you're looking for quality gear without overpaying, shop cheapesttshirts.ca. Huge selection for men, women, and kids. Tees, hoodies, headwear, bags, and more. Proud Montreal business. Order today, ship today, delivery tomorrow. That's cheapesttshirts.ca. Local, fast, and affordable. Brought to you by instacustoms.com. Do you need custom gear from a local Montreal business? Instacustoms.com has you covered. Custom shirts, hoodies, hats, and more made your way. Fast turnaround, great quality, and proudly Montreal-based. Check out instacustoms.com. Brought to you by Cabletel. For trusted alarm systems in Quebec and Eastern Ontario, choose Cabletel. Over 20 years of expert installation and top-tier protection for homes and businesses. Check out Cabletel.com. Email them info@Cabletel.com. It's Cabletel. Peace of mind you can count on. Brought to you by Morella's Steakhouse. Looking for an unforgettable night out? Morella's Steakhouse on Highway 132. It's just 15 minutes from Montreal, serving up premium cuts and bold flavors, and no tax on your bill. Book your table tonight at morellassteakhouse.ca. Taste excellence tonight. Brought to you by Little Bear. Give your pet the best with Little Bear Pet Supply. It's a proudly family-owned business here in Montreal for over 30 years. Chuck, Evie, and their all-star staff have you taken care of with all the top brands at the best prices, and they really care for your pets. Shop online at littlebearonline.com or visit them on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. It's Little Bear Pet Supply. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Head over to McLean's Pub, 1210 Peel Street in the heart of downtown Montreal. Great food, cold drinks, and big games on all the screens. McLean's Pub, good times and great company. There's Marco D'Amico. I'm Shaun Starr. Don't forget Morella's Steakhouse and our VIP extravaganza giveaway. 2 tickets to go see the Boston Bruins and Montreal Canadiens March 17th. Luxury transportation to and then back from the game. And, of course, $200 to spend at Morella's Steakhouse, Highway 132, 15 minutes from downtown Montreal. It's very simple. Just go to Morella's Steakhouse on Instagram. It's worth downloading the Instagram app if you're old like me and don't have it. Just download it, enter the contest, and we wish you good luck. The draw coming up on March 12th. The Montreal Canadiens dropped the final 25 games of the regular season. Marco, sitting pretty, brother. 72 points through 57 games, 32 wins. Are we looking at, is this a better team than the one you and I covered at length last year? The one that limped to the finish line at the Four Nations and kicked in the barn door post Four Nations when general manager Ken Hughes put it at the feet of his captain. You don't want me to trade your guys? Well, then do something about it. Nick Suzuki and his boys did something quite loud and qualified for the playoffs, defying all the odds. What do we make of the final 25 games here and how much better this team is than the one we saw last season?
I think there's a possibility that it could be even better than what we saw last year. And I think the fact that they're rested is going to do nothing but help them, because you have to factor in the Montreal Canadiens had one of the most taxing schedules leading up to the Olympic break. And I can tell you from being in the room and talking to the team, a lot of the players were gassed. And I think you look at guys like Ivan Demidov, you look at guys like Lane Hudson that have been relied upon that aren't, well, Lane Hudson lesser to a degree because now he's used to it, but even Ivan Demidov, he's not used to this kind of a full length schedule, playing this many games, playing that kind of intensity. And so being able to kind of take that break, come back around and be able to tackle it, I expect, a player like Demidov to be able to take off to a higher clip, which was already impressive to begin with, but to a higher clip in the same vein that Lane Hudson absolutely popped off last year after the Four Nations. It's just, it's and to a degree, I'll say the same thing for a guy like Matthew Schaefer. I think Matthew Schaefer is about to have a monstrous second half of the season, because these are the kinds of players that would normally hit walls on an uninterrupted 84 games, or 82, but soon to be 84 game season. And I think that's exactly where you're able to help out with the Canadiens. And then one of the things we haven't really kind of addressed, but is a reality, is this season's compact schedule has made it very difficult for, successive practice sessions. And for a young team, that's extremely important. And that's exactly what they've been getting into over these last couple of days. And, again, over the next few days before the Canadiens drop the puck against the New York Islanders. So I think for a young team, that's extremely beneficial. There's a lot of learning that goes into that. So you add learning with rest for a young team. I think that's a recipe for success.
The schedule is bonkers. It opens up for the Canadiens when they host the Islanders on Thursday this week. Then they play Saturday, and then it gets crazy. March 6th, March 7th, March 10th, March 11th, March 14th, March 15th. I mean, right out of the chute, they're going to play a couple of games, staggered games, Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday. How important is it going to be here? I mean, to manage this output again, as you just finished talking about the condensed schedule. I mean, there's a lot of hockey packed in a tight little window, Marco.
Absolutely. And I think the thing you have to be careful when it comes to a tight schedule like this is just how you go about, choosing the players that you play and making sure there's a rotation. And I think this is where the Canadians' depth is definitely going to come in. But the youth of this team is definitely going to be put on display because there are some other teams that, there are a lot, like the Florida Panthers sent 11 players to the Olympics.
Wild.
I think that's a team that's going to be very tired when it comes back already with the last 3 Stanley Cup finals that they've gone on. I wouldn't expect the Florida Panthers to come back and just go on a tear. I think that, a lot of their players actually didn't looked gassed in this tournament. And so I'm wondering how that affects them. I'm wondering how the injuries and, the amount of players that went to this tournament impacts a team like Tampa Bay that's at the top of the Atlantic right now. I look at, Logan Thompson looking like he seemingly tweets something. How does that impact the Buffalo Sabres? So there's layers to this. And I feel like the Canadians came out of this unscathed. The grand majority of their core is well rested. Like even Uri Slafkovsky, his last game was on Saturday, right? So he's already back in Montreal and, or on his way and, back in Montreal, confirmed back in Montreal, but he's in a good place right now. And I feel like the whole team is, and that's just how that helps them in that push. And I feel like from a talent perspective, it's even more impressive. Mm-hmm. And it kind of will help them going into the trade deadline because you mentioned it. They only have 3 games before the trade deadline. I don't expect the Canadians to be aggressive buyers, but I definitely would think that, they're going to take this time to evaluate to see that if something does come down the pipe, they would look at that. But my hot take, if the Canadians do make trades, I think there will be 2 trades between now and the trade deadline. That's my take.
Patrick Laine is one of those 2 trades. I mean,
I would gather as much. Yeah, I would gather to think that Patrick Laine is one of them. And then I believe if the Canadians do something massive, it's out of the blue, and it would be something that is unforeseen. If not, I do expect a depth move to be able to help the Canadians, maybe in a role, kind of like a role player kind of situation, just to, kind of round out the group and give them maybe an opportunity to go out there and win a round. And I think that's exactly what the Canadians would like to see. But they would more likely, and from what I'm hearing, they would more like to see that happen organically than with them kind of incentivizing that by a trade.
I want to talk about the stretch run and the importance of goaltending. Are we going to see something with a brand new goalie coach in Marco Marciano? The fact that, Sam Montembeault, didn't go to the Olympics and an opportunity to maybe kind of fine tune, get some rest, work on his game. But what about individual milestones? Nick Suzuki leads the team with 65 points, Lane Hutson 58, Cole Caulfield 57. So they have 3 guys that are at least a point a game player that went into the Olympic break. What's more likely? Cole Caulfield projected 46 goals, Nick Suzuki 94 points. Can Suzuki hit 100? Can Cole Caulfield hit 50?
A lot to ask for. Suzuki would have to go on the same tear he went post 4 Nations for that to happen, and even then some. It's a hard thing to do. It's very possible. I at the beginning of the season, I think I told you this. I projected 92 points for Nick Suzuki. I projected 45 goals for Cole Caulfield. I stand by that today. I know that's not a sexy answer, but here's my hot take for you guys. I think the Canadians are going to have 5 players at 70 points or more this season by the time it's done. I think Lane Hutson will be in the 70 to 75 point range, but I also believe that Uri Slafkovsky and Ivan Demidov will squeak their way in there. That's my hot take because Uri Slafkovsky to me reached another level in these playoffs, in these Olympics. I think he showed that he could play with a lot of confidence. His analytics were insane, and I think that was backed by the eye test in terms of the way that he played. and how he impacted the ice and the way that he was able to be a transition monster. When it comes to Ivan Demidov, I think for the first time he actually took a break. He actually took a little bit of a break. Call it a reverse Mitchkov, but he was highly active in the summer, constantly training twice a day on the ice. I felt like he took it a little bit more easy this time. Actually took a vacation, went to Florida for a bit, came back, and then was back to work and has been back to work ever since. I think a refreshed Demidov with the information he's been able to gather this season has the potential to be a very dangerous player down the stretch. And I feel like in these kinds of games, again, we talked about it. It's kind of when a player hits their wall is around February. I feel like as the games get more meaningful, so too will Demidov's game. So if he doesn't hit 70, they'll be in that 65-point range, in my opinion. But I think the way the Canadiens are going to try to be down the stretch, they're going to try to avoid what they did last year and qualify for the playoffs in the 82nd game of the season. I would expect them to push pedal to the metal. And there's a lot of players on that team that want to prove people wrong. You think Caulfield, you think Hudson, Suzuki to a degree by the amount of time he was used in this tournament. I think that they're all going to want to make statements. I expect a very big second half or third, if you want to call it that.
So in other words, right, the Montreal Canadiens pick up where they left off going into the break. One of the highest scoring on average per game teams in the National Hockey League, and that doesn't really slow down. With the perspective of, looking at 5 guys that finish with at least 70 points. The only thing I would add to that, if the Canadiens as an organization can reach that milestone, and we're talking about individual performances from Suzuki to Hudson to Caulfield to Demidov to Slafkovsky, and they all hit at least 70 points, the Montreal Canadiens marker will finish inside the top 3 of the Atlantic Division. They resume their schedule Thursday this week as the number 2 place team. Who's the team to watch? Who are they looking over their shoulder at? Maybe with a little bit of a sweat. Is it the Buffalo Sabres? Is it the Boston Bruins? Who are the Canadiens sweating in the final run here?
If I'm the Canadiens, the team that would be the most interesting is definitely the Buffalo Sabres. From what I'm being told, the Buffalo Sabres don't plan on trading Alex Tuch.
Right.
They're more likely to take him on as their own rental than move him. So they're not getting any weaker. And I don't think that they're necessarily going to regress. I thought Rasmus Dahlin had a very, very good tournament. So I don't think they're complaining there. And they're getting Josh Norris back. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is back. So a lot of the injuries that were kind of plaguing them are back. So I think they're going to pick up right where they left off. I don't think that's going to be an issue. The Boston Bruins are an interesting one because they are looking to add. They have the young assets to be able to add some pieces. So they may try to push this up a notch. And I get it. It's understandable. Similar to what we talked about yesterday with the Seattle Kraken, either you make the playoffs or you're in no man's land, right? Unless the Leafs totally bomb out and give you like a top 10 pick, you're going to go for it. And so I understand it with the core that they have, push through, and I would expect them to try to get better. So yeah, definitely Buffalo and Boston are teams to watch. I think, to be completely honest with you, with no disrespect to Senators fans, I think the Senators are out of it in reality and in that regard. So it really does become those two. Tampa is always dangerous. Florida, for me, again, like they're 8 points out. I 8 points out at the trade deadline. You would expect them to maybe try to recuperate some assets. I'm not expecting them to trade like a Bobrovsky, like some people are suggesting. I think Bob is, has always wanted to play in Florida. He's got assets in Florida. I think he'll stay in Florida. But maybe guys like, Jeff Petrie, or guys like Evan Rodriguez or Jesper Boquist, maybe make some space under the cap. We'll see what could happen there, but I expect them to come back swinging next season. So that being said, I think it's I think there's 5 to 6 teams in the Atlantic that you're going to have to watch out for. Buffalo is the one that I think rightfully so, just seeing how, when they play with the Canadiens and how that looked like, that would raise the most amount of ire, in my opinion, in terms of a team to take seriously. But also factor in the Canadiens are about to play Tampa Bay significantly more often than they did in the first half of the season. So a team to watch as well as the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're always dangerous. And, for all intents and purposes, they should be getting healthy at the right time heading into the playoffs after being plagued with injuries all season.
There's Marco D'Amico. I'm Shaun Starr. If you like what you're listening, watching, give us a like, give us a free subscription. Costs you nothing, and just puts a little shine on us. And we always appreciate the loyalty here from the legions of fans of the Starr and D'Amico show, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, right here on YouTube.com. The elephant in the room for me, Marco, as we talk about the Canadiens' final push in the 25 games that are left here, it's going to be the goaltending. And what happens, with Sam Montembeault's very, I'll put it kindly, turbulent season, how Jakub Dobeš has kind of looked great, not looked great. Of the final 25 games, Marco, there are 6 remaining that are back to back. So it's going to be a tough, as we already talked about moments ago. What's your feel about the goaltending? You see it being more or less a 13-12 kind of split in terms of games started, whether it's Montembeault and Dobeš. And let me put you on the spot. Thursday against the Islanders, who do you give the net to?
I would personally give it to Jakub Dobeš. I think we may see in 25 games, I think we may see probably something closer to a 15-10 split.
Okay.
To be honest with you, just because the back-to-backs, there's 6 of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned. Yeah.
So the 6 are guaranteed. You're going to probably split the 2, and then after that, you see kind of where things go.
Yeah.
I'll go one better. I think it'll be 16. I think it'll be 13, 9, and 2 for Jacob Fowler.
Whoa, there's I was not expecting Jacob Fowler. And what that happens when in I mean, Marco, you can't be doing that. I mean, your place has to you're no, there's no calming down here. When it comes to a top 3 spot, I mean, the goal would be nice to finish inside the top 3 in a world that exists where Fowler plays. I mean, we're talking about games in April, unless Dobeš and Montembeault just completely lose their way before then. I mean, I can't envision a scenario Fowler doesn't play at any point until April, and the Canadiens' position is kind of locked in. No,
that's exactly it. I think the Canadiens will have their position locked in, and then you'll probably get a game or 2 for Jacob Fowler to rest some of the guys, as they generally do when they clinch their spot in the playoffs. I mean, you look at the Montreal Canadiens right now. Tell me, who would you rather play in a 7-game series? Would you rather play the Buffalo Sabres?
No.
Or would you rather play the Carolina Hurricanes?
Oof.
If I'm the Montreal Canadiens,
I would take Carolina, but
I would take Carolina right now, and we'll see what kind of the changes that they make. Yeah. But I would take Carolina 100% over the Buffalo Sabres right now. 100%. Because if you can solve Bussi, you solve the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, I mean, the one time you saw him, and the guy had a red light Rasico. He had sunburn on the back of his neck when the last time we saw this guy, right? But he just got a contract out of Carolina, so obviously they see they see big things for that young man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Carolina just so Buffalo is run and gun. They're fast and they're aggressive. Carolina, what worries me about that question is Carolina is just like top to bottom, fundamentally responsible and kind of boring. Those boring teams worry me, whereas Buffalo, in my opinion, has a little bit more of a wild card feel to them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But I feel like Buffalo is going to squeak themselves into the 3rd spot in the Atlantic. And then at that point, it would be, or 2nd, depending on what happens in Montreal, but it would be basically those 2. The other team that we're not talking about enough, I feel like, is Detroit.
Yes.
And Detroit has had Montreal's number this year. Right? Like Montreal got a Herculean performance from Dobeš in the 2nd game of the season against Detroit, and that's fine. But after that, they've had significant trouble playing Detroit the following 2 games. Who would you prefer? And I think that also plays into it, right? So that either way, if you're not one of the top 2 teams, you don't get home ice advantage. Yes, it's good in the sense that you want to be one of the top in the Atlantic just for bragging rights. You want to be one of those top 3. I get it. But if it comes down to playoff formats, I don't think it cares, as long as it puts you in the best position to win. And I feel like right now the Atlantic division is superior, both in top end and in depth, to the Metropolitan. And I feel like, given all the changes to the Carolina Hurricanes, given some of the injuries, given how some of those players have played, given like the fact that, for example, a guy like Logan Stankoven maybe hasn't lived up to the hype after being acquired for Rantanen, and Kotkaniemi is basically a 13th forward. Unless Carolina improves dramatically, I think that's the team that the Canadiens best match up against, because if it's speed speed versus speed and talent versus talent, I think for the first time in a long time, the Canadiens have more than Carolina does. And that works for me. I would be more weary of playing a team, or at least a little bit more reserved against playing a team that is built similarly to Montreal, but further ahead in the rebuild. And that's what I think a team like Buffalo is. And I feel like a team like Detroit is going to try to significantly improve, especially on the back end and down the middle. And if they do so, they become an even more dangerous threat. So this is why I'm saying finishing in second or third in the Atlantic is fun for bragging rights, but may not be the best outcome from a playoff matchup.
The good news is the Canadiens don't see Buffalo again for the rest of the season. We know that. They've got Detroit one more time. They got Toronto. They got Boston. Of course, we're sending fans to that game on Tuesday, March 17th, courtesy of Marilla's Steakhouse. And they have a home and home with the Carolina Hurricanes. A couple of teams we're talking about that are going to see the Montreal Canadiens, and we'll be here to cover that on Starr and D'Amico on YouTube.com, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, man. Looking forward to the resumption of the Montreal Canadiens regular season. Ready for the stretch run, ready for the 25 games, ready for this Canadiens team to finish top 3 in the Atlantic Division. Let's go. Buckle up. Thanks, Marco.
Always a pleasure, guys. Have a great day.